What is going on, everyone? Matt here for GR Weekly. And take two. It was bound to happen at some point, but I was muted for my entire intro in the first take. That was like 10 seconds ago. So we're doing it again here on Friday, part 2 of week 10. And now I'm way on tilt. So we're going to get right into it. But if you like when I mess up, make sure to follow me at Methodical1 because I do it there all the time. Follow the Gridiron Ratings at the Gridiron Rating channel on Twitter. And make sure to like and subscribe on the Gridiron Ratings channel and not have only access to my shows, but getting the defensive and the slate for the Gridiron Ratings YouTube channel. So right at that, we're going to get right into this Thursday night football game because I'm now going to be talking about it twice. So Miami versus Baltimore. Miami wins this game 22-10. I'm very surprised to just see 4 sacks were officially accounted for in this game, as it felt like every single drive the Miami Dolphins really had Lamar Jackson's number and putting him on the ground pretty consistently. Now, with that, they did not particularly have a good offensive game, especially Mike Gesicki, a big old goose egg in your scorings for this week. But they had a great game plan, limit Jackson's real effectiveness on this game, limit Marquise Brown as well. 6 receptions on 13 targets. Not a really big score ever really came out of him in this game. We did have a big man score, Robert Hunt, which was called back. It is an illegal forward progression. But that picture of him flying through the air upside down is going to live on, I think, in a lot of people's memories through the 2021 season. But in terms of offense, they really suffered. Albert Wilson was really the only real contributor for them in any sort of way, mostly because he was lost in the defensive scheme, sort of down the stretch pass he had towards the end of the game. But Gaskin, 16 touches, 45 yards, bad. But continuing to do a lot of inability with his big workload is not something that is going to shy away from people using him in further weeks. Having 16 touches is very, very important for running back, but not having to do much with them. He's came into this game average around 2.7 yards per touch in the previous 2 games. Really want to see him get forward and doing some more very important things for this Miami Dolphins team. Congratulations for them going 3-7 and pick up the win here. But I did not particularly like a lot of what I saw going into the game. Gesicki and Waddle both underwhelming. Gesicki, like I said, catchless, and Waddle held under 65 yards for the 7th time this season. Or on the Baltimore side, don't really see a reason for why guys like Duvernay is having more snaps than Rashad Bateman. Why is Sammy Watkins out there getting any sort of target work? The fumble, that's neither here nor there, but he does beat my projection on him for 13.5 points over in the Front Yard Fantasy crew. A full points PPR, I thought Bateman would have a nice game. 6 for 80. That's pretty good for me. In my sort of regard with that. Mark Andrews, catching touchdowns, could have had a second one. Jackson throwing the pick in the end zone. Not a really great look for the way that this game sort of ends. But I still think the pass attack for the Baltimore Ravens is really where it's going to lie at. Jackson and both receivers and the tight end, Mark Andrews, are really going to be guys I think you should be utilizing often. Jackson, top 5 sort of quarterback. Andrews, top 5 tight end. And you have both receivers I think are going to be startable players. I've been very high on Rashad Bateman. I was a top 10 ranker on him going into this game. I think I'm going to like what I'm seeing out of Bateman going forward, and it's only going to be more, I think, consistent work out of him, showing that he was down the stretch really being utilized in a spot where they needed the players to really step up. One of the guys to do so was Bateman. I think he's going to be on the up and up for sure. The running backs, I still would like to think that we're not going to have as casual time that we did in this one with Devonta Freeman really getting so much work as he did, because we didn't have Le'Veon Bell was not involved at all in around 3 touches or 1 yard for that regard on those work. And then we had Murray out for this game. Not having those guys really count in for the overall workload let Freeman be somewhat featured in a backfield that's not featured a running back basically in the past few seasons. Not expecting that to continue going forward. I'd still like to stay away from this running back group if at all possible. Now to preview the remaining games here for week 10, starting with this Tampa Bay versus the Washington football team. Tampa Bay favored by 9.5, 51.5 point over under. Starting on the Tampa Bay side, we're going to be without Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski. Possibly also without Chris Godwin, who's going to be a game time decision. So with that, Tyler Johnson, I think right now is going to be a flex type wide receiver with Godwin in. With Godwin out, I think he's been knocking on the door of a top 24 play. Right around Hunter Renfrow and Rashad Bateman, I think he's still going to have him behind those guys. I think he'd have that 14-point total that Bateman have. I think my overall ranks, I'm going to have him right behind. It's a weird way. You can't, on Fantasy Pros, adjust players who are already locked in for the week. So I think I'm going to have really him right around, where Bateman was going to finish out. But Mike Evans, right now, top 10 with Godwin in. Without Godwin, I think he's a top 5 play. I think he's one of the best players actually wide receiver in the week. I might have him as, top 2 or top 3. Evans has had just a string of, in the past few years, spots where he just blows up 30, 40-point games. I think we're going to see one possibly here against Washington. Washington has been deep, has really had a trouble with deep balls and really trouble with big plays happening. Mike Evans is that type of receiver. I think he's going to have a real explosion week. There's a player I really do not want to play against this week, a wide receiver. It's Mike Evans. If you have him, you're going to be really, really excited. I think he's going to be in an even better spot if we don't have Chris Godwin for this one. In terms of the rest of the Buccaneers, obviously starting Brady. With Gronk out, tight end is still pretty deep this week. With that, Brate is going to be just a mid tight end 2 option for me. You're hoping to score just like basically any other tight end. I think he's a fine option if you have Gronk and are really stuck. Logan Thomas on the other side of the ball, if he is active for this one, I would say start Logan Thomas over Cameron Brate. Otherwise, with a bye, I don't think this should affect anything in this backfield. Ronald Jones, just one game of double-digit touches on the season, less than 20% snap percentage since week 2 in every single game. Fournette, a low RB1 option for me. I'm starting over guys like James Conner and Mitchell over there in San Francisco. Or to the Washington side, really hoping this for them, the bye week does a little bit of a bounce back effort for their passing attack. Less than 14 points in 3 straight games and just one game with 300 passing yards in that stretch as well. Taylor Heineke and co. I really wanted them to do possibly a little bit more this season. Unfortunately, they've had some injuries. Curtis Samuel, Logan Thomas. We do get Thomas back now. Haven't seen him since the early part of the season. But they've had an on-paper very good fantasy schedule, and they've really not done too much with it. Terry McLaurin, like him as a wide receiver 2 this week. It's going to mix in. He's a wide receiver 2 in sort of flavor of what he is in terms of the consistency he can do, because he's going to have big blow up games, but we've seen guys against like the Atlanta Falcons where Heineken just tosses the ball up and it happens to land in McLaurin's hands. I don't think we're going to be very casually comfortable playing McLaurin as wide receiver 1. That's really not what I want to look him as. A high wide receiver 2, possibly of a wide receiver 1 game in terms of the fantasy player he is and the talent that he has. But if you're going to at least attack anything in the Tampa Bay defense, it is through the air. I just really don't want to trust Tyler Heineke right now. Hoping that them coming out of the bye, we get some better performances out of them. But Washington as a whole, really not super comfortable with them as a team. They've been very disappointing on both sides of the ball, defensively especially. In terms of running backs, we have a very tough matchup here for Antonio Gibson. I do not think he's right. I'm very worried the shin issue is we're going to come out after the season and said he probably should not have been playing at all. So J.D. McKissic, I am starting J.D. McKissic over Antonio Gibson in PPR formats for sure. If you're going to at least do something, you're going to do something through the air. McKissic can have a sort of game like we saw, in weeks past where if they need hurry up and they need passing work, sort of offense, they're going to McKissic in these situations and not going to Antonio Gibson. So for me, that's the player I'd rather start out of this backfield and one I'm ranking higher here in week 10. Because opposing running backs, they've really struggled against Tampa Bay. Only one game, which was in week 8 against New Orleans, that a team have collectively over 150 rushing yards against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. McLaurin, really my only firm start. Logan Thomas, he's active, will be a top 15 tight end. Otherwise, I'd rather start J.D. McKissic over Gibson as a low RB2, high RB3 option. Not really super duper excited about it, but I think he's a starting running back. And really, if he's out there and healthy and able to catch passes in PPR formats, that's a starting running back these days, unfortunately. Carolina versus Arizona. Arizona fair by 10.5 right now. That should change possibly. 44-point over-under. Starting with the Carolina Panthers with some big news, which was Cam Newton returning. So Carolina goes out and gets Cam Newton, puts Sam Darnold on IR. Technically, we should not have Cam Newton available for this Sunday. PJ Walker should still be the starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers in this one. For me, Cam rest of the season, I think he's a mid quarterback 2 option. Not really a top 12. We're looking at a guy that if he's not going to run like he's done in years past, I don't think we're going to have the same level of overall fantasy output that we can really say this is a guy we should put in the top 12. And we're looking at guys like Jalen Hurts and Taysom Hill. We're thinking that they're not only going to be running, but having enough passing work to at least be efficient and get into that top 12 type numbers. Cam, if he's not going to be running a ton, I don't particularly love him. This is, not the exact same Cam that we had, all those years ago. This is a different type of player. not particularly someone I'm extremely excited about in terms of putting into my lineup. I think this helps the overall team because it really can't get worse than Sam Darnold has played over the last month or so. So McCaffrey, we got to talk about what it does for him. We got to talk what it does for DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson as well. McCaffrey saw massive work with Newton in 2018. I saw people talking about the 2019 numbers when McCaffrey had his really huge, like 20 plus touchdown type year. He was on the field just all the time. That was without Cam Newton. He missed pretty much the entire season. He played just in week 1. He got hurt in the preseason. He was not right. And then he left the Panthers in 2020. I don't think it changes too much for Christian McCaffrey. I think the schedule is going to be the real problem because their playoff schedule is terrible. So we talk about like McCaffrey rest of the season as well. McCaffrey and co needs to play the Bills, the Bucks, and the Saints for their fantasy playoffs. So that's not very fun. We're getting towards that point where you have to look at schedules in terms of if you're going to be in the playoffs and you're going to be playing these type of like really high-end players, how much can you get out of them? And that schedule is brutal. But at least for week 10, Chris McCaffrey, love it. I don't think the Arizona Cardinals are any sort of pushover. I like this defense. But he came out and had 100 total yards and played 50% of the snaps in his first game back after missing a good majority of the season. They really just need McCaffrey to do all the McCaffrey type things. So if you have McCaffrey, start him with confidence and, believe that he'd be playing like the old McCaffrey of old. What I think could change is this receiver group. Robbie Anderson has not had a good day, a good time of it this year with his old buddy, apparently Sam Darnold. If there's any glimmer of hope for him to be coming back to his wide receiver 2 days, which was long gone in this season. Wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 sort of type numbers. Hoping Cam can really link up with them because Anderson has been getting a good amount of targets, really doing nothing with them. But for right now, we got to see exactly what it's going to be because we got PJ Walker for this week. DJ Moore, he's going in to be a wide receiver 2 for me. I don't think he's a locked in wide receiver 1. It's partly because of the poor play of Darnold, but partly he's not turning in big numbers regardless. I really like this Arizona defense here. Don't love this spot for more. Don't love this spot for a lot of talented receivers in week 10. Wide receiver 2 for him. McCaffrey locked in wide receiver 1. Not really loving a lot else on this Carolina side for this one. Arizona, though, a little bit tough scenario to talk about right now because we don't exactly know if Murray and Hopkins are going to be playing once again. If I'm leaning right now, I think Murray's in. I think Hopkins is out, but that's still to be seen. If Murray is out again, I think it could just be the James Conner show again, but expect Benjamin to mix in a little bit as well. And if we could take anything away from a pretty similar spot in terms of defensive quality last week against San Francisco, big Connor, then take your picks with the rest of the group. But we do get AJ Green in this game who was out for week 9. So now it's even tougher to see what the reception and target number is going to look like from a team that has Colt McCoy starting at quarterback, possibly. If I go with them all in outside of Hopkins, it would be Christian Kirk as my favorite of the group, then Moore, then Green. Ertz outside my top 12. Big sort of monkey wrench with AJ Green being back. We would like DeAndre Hopkins to be active, but even if he is, I think he's a wide receiver 2 option for me. I'm not very comfortable starting him in case he possibly can get re-injured and miss again this game. Minnesota versus the LA Chargers. This is the best game of the week for fantasy purposes for sure. Chargers minus 2.5, 53-point over-under. Hard to find people I do not want to start in this game. Both quarterbacks can be started, no doubt. Both running backs, no doubt. Both wide receiver 1s, no doubt. Sit the tight ends, though. But it really, in terms of where it gets sticky, is the wide receiver 2s, right? So Thielen, 1 game of less than 7 targets on the year. That's great. 1 game, only 2 games where he has not scored. That's excellent. Those won't sound really good. But 3 of the last 5 games, 3 receptions left. 5 of 8 games on the year, he's had 50 yards or less. When he hits big, he hits really big. Just like Mike Williams on the other side. Boop. In his first 3 games, 80 yards in each and a score in each. Also had 7 catches in each. So that first month, he was rocking and rolling for sure. Then 1 game of 7 receptions since, 2 or less in 4 games. Man, so you go from having a guy who's just getting a ton of receptions to barely having more than 2 a game. That's really, really bad. 1 game the last 5 with a score, no red zone targets over the last 2 weeks. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are no longer on the same tier at all. Mike Williams has dropped very heavily in terms of a lot of people's public opinion on him, where he's just gone back to the old Mike Williams, where it seems like he's had, every sort of season, he's had a huge huge games and it'll disappear for a month, but it was kind of spread out. It all seems to have just come right at the beginning of the year, and now we're getting the rest of what Mike Williams has been over the last 2 weeks. One game of more than 8 full PPR points in a month. The highs of these two keep them to be wide receiver 2 in my ranks, because they can just as easily be, 25-point scorers to being 2-point scorers, which, we would have had from Adam Thielen if not for a late game touchdown in week 9. Join the legs of DJ Moore and DeAndre Hopkins right at the bottom of the wide receiver 2 barrel. Great players in odd positions here in week 10. Philadelphia versus Denver. Denver minus 2.5, 44.5 point over under. Eagles remain the same as they usually are, and really both sides. This game is just kind of like you're just usually starting the guys that you would want to, sort of weird spots. Hurts and Goddard, you're starting with confidence, but outside of them, Devonta Smith, I just like as a flex, which is basically where I always like him. He'll have his games and he'll disappear as well. It really just kind of goes of what Philadelphia's sort of game script is. This is a very game script dependent team. Normally, because they're kind of just doing nothing for 3 quarters and then they have to light it up in the 4th, or like that that Detroit game where the Eagles just got up, by 30 and then completely stepped off the gas. The running back group is still a total headache. Just Howard and Scott, I have them back to back with Gainwell in the 40s. Any one of them can mix in for a goal line score. If you really are desperate to start one, Jordan Howard would be my favorite. I'd like to not start any of them. It's a situation I think you should avoid in its entirety. Over on the Denver side, though, Eagles remain the same as they usually are. Over on the Denver side. Headaches on this side as well. Fant returns, that's an issue for Denver. What happened was 2 weeks ago, you would have all the pass catchers maybe around 3 or 4 targets each, and that's not good for us because you're seeing just consistent sort of same-like numbers from everyone involved. We can't really focus in and be, this is the guy you need to target and play for sure in your lineups. Because receiving group, I'm not really in love with them. Sutton is my favorite. Fant is not in my top 12. The running backs, I think, is where it's at because I think this Eagles matchup is really, really good for running backs. I'm going to be leaning Melvin Gordon as I have for basically the entire year. We're in week 10, and we're still waiting for Javonte Williams to really take over this backfield. It's going to happen, I think, still eventually. I don't know what eventually really means in this sort of sense, but I like to think as well that the running back they drafted to be their guy of the future. I think 2022 is still really the year for him, but 2021, this is a good spot. Running backs against the Eagles is the 4th best matchup, 6th most rushing yards allowed to the running back group, 8th most receiving yards. So when you could do different things out of the backfield, they're both capable of really, getting good rushing production and Melvin Gordon really well through the air. I think you can see both games, both good games from both running backs in this sort of spot in different sort of areas. Seattle versus Green Bay and the Kansas City versus Las Vegas Raiders, the last 2 games on the docket. Seattle versus Green Bay minus 3, 49.5 point over under. Both QBs are back. Great. Like that. Which should be excellent because these offenses really suffered. Jordan Love was pathetic last week against the Chief, and Geno Smith was passable, but we didn't really get to see the real DK Metcalf and good Tyler Lockett numbers as we have been kind of known to have out of them. We love both quarterbacks. We love both wide receiver ones. Start Aaron Jones. We love all that. With Wilson and Rodgers back, this game gets a lot better than what it could have been. Lockett should seem, hopefully, some stability as well. We've seen the highest highs of him in the first few weeks, guys just like Mike Williams. And then we've seen just, dud weeks until like last week had a pretty good outing as well. Those random big, deep catches, really what's going to be really the difference maker for Lockett. We're hoping that he's going to turn in a good performance. Wide receiver 2 for me. Metcalf joins Adams in the wide receiver 1 crew. But we at one point had to talk about Chris Carson, but he has been ruled out for this game. So Alex Collins should fill in once again. But if they screw around with Rashad Penny, which they've been known to do with limits of what Collins can particularly do in this offense, running back 2 for me, he's in that group with like Naheem Hines. So we're talking about like low running back 2. You can start them, or you're hoping for 10 to 12 fantasy points is really what you're looking as the output from those sort of guys. Not particularly too much on this else in this game. You're really straightforward with who you're starting. Right now, we've been told that he's been cleared. He is good to go. Everything that we expected out of Russell Wilson should be locked and loaded, and Aaron Rodgers should be back for this one as well, unless anything changes in the next day or so. And the last game for the night, Kansas City versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Kansas City favored by 2.5, 51.5 point over under. Got to talk about Patrick Mahomes because I am the lowest ranker of Patrick Mahomes in week 10. And can this really play out poorly for me if this goes south. The 11 quarterbacks I have ahead of Mahomes, and over the last 3 games, how many times those guys have outgrown. We've talked about this in the previous show, but there's 11 guys, guys like, Murray and Herbert and Wilson and even Wentz. These are all guys I'm starting over Mahomes here. And it's deserved. He has played poorly. Is he, we go from a 5-week sort of period of him being still a locked in Hall of Famer in like his 3rd season to now being he's dust and he's bad and he's washed up at age like 24. I don't know. This is still the MVP type kind of guy. I think they've been a weird sort of stretch. We were hoping maybe. I saw Heath Cummings of CBS.com saying that Clyde Edwards-Helaire really makes a difference for the total points per game of Patrick Mahomes. I don't want to play too much into that. Unfortunately, we might not see Edwards-Helaire back in this one. It was a stretch from Coach Andy Reid that he would be seeing Helaire on the field for this one. But Kelsey and Hill still locking them in. It's very tough to get away from these guys. Because if there's a spot for the Chiefs to really be unlocked here on Monday night in a divisional game, they really kind of have to get good things going to here. Because if they had Aaron Rodgers on their center last week in Green Bay, the Chiefs get smoked. And Kelsey, it's very hard to not rank him as the tight end one. And Hill just needs one pass. He gets one reception and he's gone for a 75-yard score. So you're starting those guys. Love them. Darrell Williams locks in right now as my running back 16. If Clyde Edwards-Helaire was active, it would be kind of a wishy-washy situation of who you really want to go with. I would be starting Helaire over Williams. But right now, at least for just having Williams active, we still get an RB2 in Williams to really lock into our lineups and be comfortable with that. And then we finish out with the Las Vegas Raiders. I love this spot for Vegas. Carr, Waller, Renfrow, and Jacobs all starts for me. Renfrow, he's going to mix in as a flex option, but in terms of who's really seen the beneficiary of, both coaching changes and personnel changes, Renfrow has been 1 and Kenyon Drake has been 2. So Kendrick has really been unlocked in the past month or so. My running back 20 on the week. And what has he really done over the course of the last month? Well, on average, he has been the 11th best running back in a points per game sort of scenario. So not just doing the scoring, he's getting work in both on the ground and through the air. They're really finally getting their money's worth because it was something we talked about in the preseason. They're paying both Kenyon Drake and Josh Jacobs basically the same amount of money to play for the Raiders. So now you're getting just not Jacobs, who has been consistently comfortably in RB2 where you can get like 14 to 15 points. That's great. That's amazing sort of stuff. But we want to have more options because we're not just we're happy that Jacobs has been good. But as a fantasy community, we're very much desperate for running backs to be able to have enough of them to start on a week-to-week basis. Kenyon Drake, start him. I love this matchup against Kansas City. I love this matchup for a lot of them. Carr, I still think I'm still leaning Mahomes over Carr. He is my QB 13, which you can always find on my pinned link on my Twitter account at Methodical1. So make sure to go check that at my rankings. I always update throughout the week, and they're always locked and loaded when inactives are announced on Sunday at 11:30. And with that, I think we're going to get on out of here. So for Gridiron Ratings, I have been Matt McCarthy. Make sure to not only just check out my show at 7:30 at Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Make sure to check out the other shows on the Gridiron Ratings channel. Tuesday and Thursday, getting defensive for all your IDP needs, and the slate on the weekend to break down DFS for this week's action. And if this was the first time or the last time you joined me, I appreciate this time you spend with me and spend here on the Gridiron Ratings YouTube channel. And we're also in audio as well, available the day after. If you don't want to just look on YouTube, you can always get it on Podbean or on Spotify. And with that, good luck in your week 10 matchups. We are 2.5 months into the year. Oh man, I'm stumbling my words right now. And with that, just good luck. And hopefully we get some good fantasy production this week because week 9 was a travesty. So we're hoping to really bounce back and have a good one here with some high scoring games here in week 10. Bye.